During today's lesson, we're going to learn how to compare and order fractions. By now, you should all know what a fraction is. We learnt this a few days ago, and a fraction represents part of a whole. In today's lesson, we're going to be thinking about fractions, but we also need to know what the lowest common multiple is. We learnt this last term, but I'm going to show you a quick definition to help remind you. A multiple is a number that can fit into a times table. For example, 12 is a multiple of 3. The lowest common multiple is the smallest number that can fit into 2 or more times tables. So, for example, we could say that 12 is the lowest common multiple of 3 and also 4, as it fits into both times tables. To help us understand fractions, we're going to begin by using some bar charts to help represent them. In this show question, how can we tell which fraction is greater? There are two bar models that show 3/4 and 2/3. They clearly show that 3/4 is greater than 2/3 and 2/3 is less than 3/4. We know this because more of the bar chart is filled up in 3/4 than it is in 2/3. Let's look at some more fractions. Here we've got 4 bar charts which all show different fractions. Let's look at the first question. We're trying to compare 1/5 with 1/4. These are the bar charts that only have one square coloured in. We can see that 1/4 is bigger here or greater than 1/5. In the second question, we're trying to compare 1/5 with 3/5. These are next to each other. We can see that 3/5 is greater than 1/5. In the third question, we're comparing 1/4 with 3/4. Again, we can see that 3/4 is greater than 1/4. In the final question, we're comparing 3/5 with 3/4. These are the blue bar charts. We can see that 3/4 has a greater value than 3/5. Now, those of you with sharp eyes may have noticed that when the denominators are the same, so the bottom number is the same, the bigger the numerator, the top number, the greater the fraction. When the numerators are the same, the top number, the smaller the denominator, the bottom number, the greater the fraction. Dora is comparing 5/6 and 3/4 by finding the lowest common multiple of the denominators. She's doing this because we can't compare sixths and quarters properly. The numbers have to be the same. She has worked out that the lowest common multiple of sixths and quarters is 12ths. Therefore, she has converted her fractions. She's found equivalent fractions for both, where the denominator is 12. So, 5/6 becomes 10/12 and 3/4 becomes 9/12. Now you may be thinking, how does 5/6 become 10/12? Well, if you multiply the top number, the numerator, by 2, you get 10. You have to multiply the bottom number, or the denominator, by 2 as well. 6 times 2 equals 12. Let's do the same for 3/4. To make sure that the denominator is also 12, you need to multiply 4 by 3. This makes 12. Because we've multiplied the bottom number by 3, we also have to multiply the top number by 3. 3 times 3 equals 9. Once she's found her equivalent fractions, she can compare them much more easily. We know that 10/12 has a greater value than 9/12. Therefore, 5/6 must be bigger than 3/4. I would like you to pause the video now and try and use the same method to work out the fractions at the bottom of the screen. You are going to need to find equivalent fractions for both by finding the lowest common multiple of the denominators. Pause the video now and try and work out the answers to the questions. Sometimes you may need to find the lowest common multiple of the numerators or the top number. In Jack's question, he has found that the lowest common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4. 4 fits into both times tables. Therefore, he has converted 2/5 into 4/10 by multiplying both the top and bottom number by 2. Now he doesn't need to convert 4/7 because now in both fractions the numerators are the same. When we're comparing these two fractions, 4/10 and 4/7, 4/7 is greater because when the numerator is the same, the smaller the denominator or the bottom number is, the greater the value of the fraction. This is really important to remember, so I'm going to repeat it again. When the numerators are the same, the smaller the denominator, so the number of parts something has been split into, the greater the value of the fraction is. I want you to try and use Jack's method to compare fractions now. So you're going to need to find equivalent fractions where the numerators both are the same, and you're going to need to use the lowest common multiple to find this. For example, I know that in the first question, 12 is the lowest common multiple of both 3 and 12. It fits into both times tables. So you are going to need to find an equivalent fraction of 3/5 where the numerator is 12. What am I going to have to multiply both parts of the fraction by so that the numerator is 12? Pause the video now and work out the answers to these fractions. Which one is greater? Here we have a do question that's asking us to order the fractions in descending order. Now you might be thinking, what does descending order mean? This is when you order something from largest to smallest. In order to answer this question, you're going to need to find equivalent fractions where the denominators are the same. You will need to use lowest common multiple to work this out. Now I'm going to give you a hint to save you some time. The denominators all have a lowest common multiple of 40. So what do you need to multiply both parts of each fraction so that the denominator is 40? Once you've worked this out, you can then order all of the fractions. Here we have our first think question. Teddy is trying to compare 3/8 and 5/12. He says that to find the lowest common multiple, he will multiply 8 and 12 together. He says that 8 times 12 is 96, and he will use a common denominator of 96. Do we think he's correct, and why? Now the first thing we need to do is think about whether 96 is the lowest common multiple for these two numbers. Is there another number that fits into both the 8 and 12 times table that is smaller than 96? I'd like you to have a go at answering this think question by yourself. Remember, it is a think question, so you're going to need to answer the question that says, is Teddy correct? You then need to use your maths to improve it and then write a written explanation of why. You'll need to pause the video now to try and answer the question. Whenever you're ready, you can resume the video. To check your answer to this question, you can find it on the slides that have also been attached in Microsoft Teams. Here we have our second think question. Mo is comparing the fractions 3/7 and 6/11. He wants to find a common denominator. You need to explain whether you think this is the most effective strategy. Remember, you don't always have to find a common denominator, you can also find a common numerator. Pause the video now and try and answer the question. Once you think you've got it, you can check the slides on Microsoft Teams where you'll find the answer. You've now come to the end of your virtual maths lesson. you can find your do, think and explore questions also on Microsoft Teams. This week, you've only been given the Blue Star sheets. Please make sure that you work through all of these and try your hardest to answer the questions. Once you've finished that, there's some challenge questions. You don't have to do this, but if you want to challenge yourself, go for it. To complete your work, you can either type directly into the boxes provided on your worksheet. You'll then need to upload this document by adding work, or you can print this sheet out, take a photo of it, and upload it by adding work as well. Remember, if you have any questions or you get stuck, you can always email us at year6@highwood.wokingham.sch.uk. Good luck!